With me now are Professor Bola Akintade, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Professor Victor Adeyemis, Professor of French and Francophone Studies, and of course, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Well, maybe Yemi will join us shortly in the course of the conversation. But first, Professor Akintade, let me start with you. We've had two guests on this program today. The first was Engineer Gbenga Adebayo, who is the chairman of the Association of Licensed Telecom Operators in Nigeria. And we were discussing the suspension of Twitter in Nigeria, where the last question I asked him was about, whether it should be NBC and the NCC, as whether it's the National Broadcasting Commission or the National Communications Commission, because people have been saying, well, which regulatory agency should be responsible? Well, NCC, the Communications Commission, is responsible for the infrastructure, for the networks, while the Broadcasting Commission has a role in this regard with the content of the network. So the confusion that is out there shouldn't be a big problem. But the big issue is this: should Twitter not be under the laws of a particular country where it operates? Because it will appear as if every international or multinational unit is bound rather by national laws. What do you think is the issue here?
First of all, our two guest speakers did very well by speaking from the perspective of their own specific interests. Engineer Gbenga Adebayo raised 2 points that drew my attention. The first one is that he said his association strongly believes that everyone should have the right of freedom of expression, that it falls squarely within international tradition. However, he posited that his association is under the regulatory framework of Nigeria's law. Now, meaning that, on the one hand, he and his association have to comply with the law of Nigeria. Why not forgetting the international dimension? That point is very critical. That necessarily raises the conflict between municipal law and international law. In this particular case, which law should take preeminence? Nigeria has the policy of towing the dualist school of thought. The dualist school of thought has it that any agreement, any understanding you consent to internationally must first of all be ratified and eventually domesticated before it can become a supranational, regulation. So in this case, the extent to which the federal government may be wrong is quite limited. But the issue is that even though the right of freedom of expression is yet to become a peremptory norm of international law, the understanding, the international tradition is simply that, look, freedom of expression, the liberty in a democratic setting, you cannot rule that one out. So that point is there. He raised a second point that when you asked him in terms of sanctioning the violators, that President Muhammadu Buhari has indicated the possibility of sanctioning people. In his response, he made the point that the mere fact that the president, the government of Nigeria, has actually taken sanctionary measures, closing down, banning Twitter in Nigeria, does not necessarily put a stop to the agitations of the people. And I think that there is a lot of Solomonic wisdom in that particular statement.
Well,
and now, okay.
Well, sorry, let me come to you. Twitter is insisting that it has its community rules. And those community rules are rules that whoever uses that platform would have to abide by. But the Nigerian government is saying that there are activities on Twitter Nigeria, that are capable of undermining the corporate existence of Nigeria.
Well, I'm worried. You just mentioned Twitter Nigeria, and I learned also that Twitter has relocated to Ghana somehow, which means they seem to be proactive in knowing what could possibly happen to them. I wouldn't completely know. I'm not into their system to know what happens. But based on what Engineer Benga said, which has also some relationship to what we call human rights and the right of people to communicate. And yes, I get a bit disturbed also in the sense that we claim that Nigeria is a sovereign state. Agree. And we are yet to listen again to the Attorney General of the Federation, who once said that national security overrides rule of law. And that's another problem I expect lawyers in Nigeria to talk about or to say, so that it could be vacated. As far as I'm concerned, if he's the Attorney General and he believes that national security overrides rule of law, it's like, if you like, a priori law set up already, and somebody needs to come and either lobby or say something that will get it vacated. As per what Twitter has done, as far as what Nigeria has done to Twitter, I always see Twitter as a personal issue, like Facebook. It's there for you to either subscribe to or not to subscribe to. And if we see the president, if we see the president as a personal entity, not necessarily a Nigerian representative, then we have to look at it in a different perspective. But as it is, the Attorney General is telling us that the president, for sure, whether it's in his personal capacity or whatever, is representing Nigeria in what he has done. And so Nigeria has to take it upon themselves to know that their president is being disrespected. It could be agreed. If the president is being disrespected by Twitter, which is a company, of course, is not even a respectable, as far as I'm concerned, entity in terms of seeing it as either United Nations or supranational body. If it is OAU or ECOWAS that we are talking about, then I will know that yes, Nigeria has to abide by the rules of OAU or ECOWAS.
No, let's look at it differently.
Yeah, but I don't see anything wrong, except Nigerians go to National Assembly and tell National Assembly, say, look, what the president or what has happened is affecting our well-being. And then the National Assembly should take it upon itself to call either the president to order, because National Assembly has right to check the president. And we know that Nigerian youths are really suffering from banning Twitter from Nigeria. Everybody knows that. Some business concerns also are worried about it. I just heard that about 160 million followers of either president or his other people are losing everything. And it seems something worrisome, because we must check the cost effectiveness.
I subscribe to the later part of your submission. But you see, the issue is that President Muhammadu Buhari has a Twitter account.
Yes.
And it is called @Buhari.
And not Nigeria.
Precisely. As distinct from @NGR.
FGN or whatever.
President. So which means that the account that has been closed,
yes,
is at best a private account belonging to the president.
Exactly.
The clarification that has been offered by government spokespersons is that this is not specifically, the action that has been taken is not specifically on account of the tweet by the president from @Buhari, but that government has been studying the activities of Twitter in Nigeria in terms of what people do on that platform, and that this is in response to that.
The French School of Analysis in polymology says that you must always differentiate between cause profonde, cause accidental, that is the original cause, the profound cause, the reason, the causal factor, original causal factor.
And the contingency, of course.
From accidental, coincidental factors. So when you are doing this type of analysis, the first question you should ask is, why is it that it is when the account was closed now that you are taking your own decision? So from there, you will begin to deepen your analysis. The second point is that, look, you know, communication is what is at stake now.
I'm really worried also.
Anyway, very quickly, you know, I don't want the two professors.
Yeah, but I'm really also worried because gagging Nigerians, the youth,
quickly,
will it be helpful for governance? That's another point to look at.
Let's go to Yemi Adamolekun, you know, for our perspective. Yemi, it's good to have you on the program today. Yes.
And it was interesting listening to two professors talk about Twitter, a platform that neither of them are on, but interesting.
Oh, thank you. You know I'm not on.
It's one of the most important point. I like what Mr. Gbenga said, and I think it was quite apt in saying that when people are aggrieved, if you don't address the root cause of the issue, and you're now trying to blame the platform with which they are expressing themselves, that you're, in a sense, setting yourself up for trouble. And I like the fact that even though he's head of an organization that obeyed government per law, he was still able to separate, recognizing why Nigerians use Twitter the way they do. And it's not just about Twitter. Twitter and social media is a platform for this age. We've seen radio stations banned. We've seen TV stations suspended or fined. At the point, it was newspapers that their licenses will be suspended because they are saying things that government doesn't want to hear. So it's not the platform that's the problem. It's the fact that Nigerian citizens...
Sorry to interrupt you. We need to take a short break. After that break, I'll come back to you. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me, I still have Professor Bola Akintade, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Professor Victor Adeyemis, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. And Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office. Yes, Yemi, we're commenting on the suspension of Twitter in Nigeria. Please go ahead.
So I was saying that the Alton chair, that I was glad that he was able to separate what they chose to do as a body in terms of obeying the directive from the Nigerian government, and the fact that he realizes that the platform is not the problem, is the fact that the Nigerian government has consistently refused, and over time, not just this administration, has consistently refused to listen to its citizens and take its citizens as an enemy rather than people that they are serving and should listen to. But I think particularly under this administration, because for me, that's part of the interesting thing about this space. In 2015 and 2019, APC used, and PDP, both parties actually, used social media extensively to campaign. And part of their campaign also included lying, included slightly incisive statements. They played the game of the platforms for their own gain. Now they're in power, in this case APC, and suddenly they don't like that the tables are now turned, because the same platform you use to talk about your opposition, citizens, in a sense, if you think of citizens as opposition in this context, now challenging you, asking you questions, talking about what concerns them is now a problem. Now, on Alton's part, though, I do think that Alton capitulated. Is that the English word? Capitulated too quickly. There was no challenge. The federal government sent you a memo. You're like, yes, sir, we will shut it down immediately, right now. And I think there was an opportunity. I believe there was an opportunity for Alton to actually engage the federal government and say, look, is there a different way we can go about this? What can we do? But we're here now. Onto Twitter, and there were a couple of conversations around. There's no Twitter Nigeria. Twitter doesn't have an office here. I mean, they were going to have set up an office here, but they went to Ghana. So they don't have an office here. So, and that's why it has happened the way it has happened. You can't, unlike a newspaper that you can shut down or remove a license or fine, there's nothing you can do with a platform like Twitter in that sense. Mr. Gbenga laid it out, it's on the internet. So what they could do, so people understand, was stop Nigerians from accessing Twitter from within Nigeria. And the only way to do that is to tell telcos not to allow Twitter signals to come through. And Nigerian citizens found a different way. Mr. Gbenga didn't like the word bypass. I like the word bypass because it just says, hey, MTN, you don't want to do this one. Let's show you a different way. But now the interesting thing is, having done that, the Nigerian government now takes it a step further. And they now say, you know what, you people still want to tweet it? Okay. Anybody that's tweeting, we shall arrest you and charge you to court. Next question, under what law will you be charging me to court for tweeting? The Attorney General, as Professor Akintade likes to say, of SAN, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, we are still wondering how that came about. Anyway, Attorney General says, when you get to court, you will find out the law that we're going to use.
Well, except that under Section 36 of Section 12 of the 1999 Constitution, nobody can be charged, can be punished for an offense that does not exist in law. So they will need to look for that law. Aoko versus Fagbemi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati. So that's the point. Because of this thing happened so quickly, they didn't have time to look for it. They are still looking. Maybe by Monday, tomorrow, they will announce what the law is. So it tells you that they are not coming from a place that it's all very knee-jerk. Now, Twitter has its own issues without a doubt. And let's be honest with it, they did not set up, I'm sure when they set it out like Facebook. Facebook wanted to network people. Twitter set up a microblogging platform. It's taken on incredible power because of the times that we live in. I have the benefit of being heard because I'm a panelist on This Day Live, because Arise has given me the opportunity to share my opinion. On radio, on TV, if you are a citizen and you're not invited as a guest of a platform, you will pay to be heard. But social media gives Nigerians access. All you're paying is for data. And once you're able to pay for data, you can express yourself.
Under Section 39 of the Constitution.
Thank you very much. And that's not just Nigerian, that's global. So social media platforms have taken on incredible amounts of power because they're able to amplify the voices of citizens, which is why there's a lot of talk about them in the context of human rights and democracy and the rights of citizens. Now, so Twitter and Facebook are being forced to understand, what does this mean for us? How do we regulate this incredible power that we have? And the truth of the matter is, in this particular case, yes, it's not just President Buhari's tweets. Nnamdi Matane has tweeted some very insightful things. And it was just after the ban that they've had to go back. And I think they're realizing some of their errors and delete some of the tweets that had been there before. Again, the way the platform works, you have to report these tweets. And somebody has to then review it and take it down. Well, again, let's realize, sorry. Okay,
I wanted you to, wrap up on this one so that we can take the second issue.
Second, yes. Sorry. And then for people to realize as well that the amount of information that goes on social media, it's an incredible amount of work to police this thing. So on this particular issue, the Nigerian government is definitely on the wrong side of citizens. Citizens will find a way to express themselves. June 12 is coming up. It's Democracy Day. A couple of people have been talking about a protest on that day. A lot of that is being discussed on Twitter. So it'll be very interesting to see what the Nigerian government chooses to do in the days ahead.
Okay, very quickly, we had another guest. That's Mr. Matane, the Secretary to the Niger State government, on the issue of those over 100 students of Salihu Tanko Islamiyah School that were abducted. On the morning show on Friday, we had the parents as guests. We had teachers and the proprietor of the school who joined us on Friday on the program. Now, were you convinced? Do you feel convinced by some of those points made by the Secretary to the State Government of Niger State to the effect that the government is doing whatever it can to ensure that those students are rescued?
Thank you. I don't envy Mr. Matane at all. And I do thank him for trying as best as he could, working in government, to lay out what they've done. I like the fact that he used their track record in reference, that we don't shy away from negotiating. That's how we got the other students back, and in a sense, that's what we're doing now. But it was also clear that we don't pay ransom, but negotiation is what we do. I liked your question to him about Dr. Bello leaving the country, and he tactfully avoided it. But again, it's a larger problem of governance in Nigeria. We don't understand optics. In my opinion, there's no reason Dr. Bello should have left the country the next day, maybe unless there was a health emergency, which again, we don't talk about with our public officials. But optics matter. You can't have children as young as 3 and 4 be kidnapped in your state, and you think your trip cannot wait. It's not about deputy governor. It's not about other government officials who on the directive of the governor. It's symbolism. And that's why when Nigerians talk about Mr. President not talking to Nigerians, that's what that means. It just shows that as an official, the most senior official in that state, elected official, that the pain of your citizens matter. And you've then taken the time, even if you want to be announcing it every minute, by the way, I'm supposed to have traveled. By the way, I'm supposed to have traveled. But I'm here because it's important. But I'm here because it's important. It communicates clearly that you take it as important. Then the second bit I wanted to mention is the issue of the Islamia schools and not knowing the number of students. I think that's a very lame excuse. Yes, a student shows up in school, but you should know how many kids were in class. That should be part of the procedures of teaching, so you know the number of students that you have. And I think Mr. Matane also indicted the state a little bit when he talked about the fact that they had done a security assessment, but it seemed that it was only focused on public schools, forgetting that if students in private schools or Islamia schools are also kidnapped, it would affect the state. So anything that has to do with safe schools and audit security should not be just public schools, should also be private schools as well.
Well, Prof, quickly, we have less than 60 seconds to go on this.
No, you mean on the Niger?
Yes.
I'm so disturbed. I don't really want to come into it because I feel ashamed somehow being a Nigerian where you say you are taking about 200-300 students or small children, on a long journey, and you say it's a kidnap. Everybody should now be feeling somehow disturbed about Nigeria. And even they said 11 children could not follow them and they were left aside, which shows that something is wrong. Nobody is monitoring what is going on, unless it's an ungoverned state or governed space of Nigeria. And I'm worried that with small Nigeria, I'm not really very comfortable with such.
I get your point. We need to take another short commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me, I still have Professor Bola Akintadewa, Professor Victor Adeyemis, and Yemi Adamolekun. Prof, quickly, on the Niger State situation, where a week ago, over 100 toddlers and a few secondary school students were abducted.
On listening to the Secretary to the State Government, Mr. Matane, I try to look at his submission from the perspective of a deductive methodology. And I'm able to say that there is no disputing the fact that the Niger State government has been aiding and abetting, quote and unquote, all these terrorists and the kidnapping. How? On the basis of his submission that on the very day that the pupils were kidnapped, there were simultaneously 5 other attacks, but the government negotiated and found solution to it. Meaning, and he told us concretely, that the government was negotiating but not prepared to pay for ransom. Now, since you are negotiating with who? That means the state government knew quite well the people who are involved. They have agents with whom they were negotiating. Then he said, 2 days after, there were other attacks, and they succeeded as well in managing the crisis. So, deductively speaking, there is no disputing the fact that the government knows who is involved. So if you know the bandits, if you know the kidnappers, if you know the enemy, now, why is it that it is difficult to know the location? How would you have taken hundreds of people? You cannot know the bush path, where they are. To the extent that they discover that you have a 4-year-old, 6-year-old, and they allow them to come back. This is the issue.
Well, we just hope, we pray that those children will be rescued and that the parents will get the support that they deserve, that they need at this critical moment in their lives. It's difficult to imagine toddlers, being abducted. Terrible.
Terrible.
Anyway, let's move on. President Muhammadu Buhari has given a stern warning to those promoting insurrection and burning down critical national assets. Speaking at a meeting with the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, the president said his government will not condone the attacks on facilities of the electoral body, and perpetrators should expect a rude shock.
It is very clear that they intend to make sure that this administration fails. I'm getting good intelligence report on daily basis. The question of insecurity in the country is being mentioned all over the world, not only here in Nigeria. But I believe there are Nigerians that will attempt at least to be fair by what I believed, that I will run the country according to the Constitution. Now, with all these people who want power, whoever they are, have they proved that I was not following the Constitution? Well, am I not leading the country according to the Constitution? What do they want? I had one impression which gave me a lot of hope and confidence to continue the way I wanted. So whoever wanted diversion or destruction of the system at this point, I think will soon have their shock of their lives.
Several lawmakers are backing President Buhari, also warning those threatening Nigeria's sovereignty through attacks on police stations, the offices of the Independent National Electoral Commission, and other institutions to desist from such acts, as the country is already overstretched by the fight against terrorism and banditry. Well, again, Yemi, let me come quickly to you. The president says Arsonists, those attacking public facilities, will be should prepare for a rude shock. But the bigger concern is the threat that the attacks on the offices and facilities of the Independent National Electoral Commission will seem to pose to the future of elections in Nigeria. 42 offices already in 14 states. And INEC says this is an emergency. Yemi, your reaction?
Thank you. It's quite unfortunate, really. I mean, I hadn't listened to that clip, and thanks for sharing. Mr. President says he's running the country according to the Constitution, and nobody can prove that he hasn't done so. Obviously, he's not reading news, nor watching TV, nor being briefed properly by his team. We've established that already. Because I'm sure you can correct me, Section 14, if I'm not mistaken, of the Constitution says that the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary responsibility of government. Something to that effect.
You are correct.
I'm sorry.
Section 14, subsection 2. Correct.
Thank you. So we have insecurity all over the country. We're the poverty capital of the world, highest number of children outside of school. Just those 3 points alone tells you very clearly that Mr. President is not doing the job he thinks he's doing. So there's a disconnect. And I quite understand it. So if a man thinks he's doing this job and people are complaining, you're like, but I'm doing work now. Obviously, he doesn't realize he's not doing anything. So that's number one. Number two, you cannot have security in an environment of injustice. Our courts have been shut for almost 3 months. And that's from the southeast to the south-south to the southwest. That's what Nigerians are saying, that we don't feel like we're in this country, we don't feel secure in this country, and the government does not care. And that keeps being reinforced over and over. I saw a clip short before I came on air, Sunday ago in Ado yesterday, and people were saying they're tired. So Sunday Igboho, who's been used as a political thug in the past, now suddenly has currency because he's speaking the hearts of people about a country that's not speaking to them. That's a problem because the state is no longer in control. And it is the state that non-state actors can't restore normalcy to a state. It is the state that needs to re-energize Nigerians in believing that there's something to fight for. And Mr. President is busy speaking English, that he will show people force. That's what we're talking about. And then lastly, INEC. Unfortunately, I believe that INEC has also found itself in this narrative of who's causing violence. I saw the infographic that they shared with Mr. President that talked about the incidences. Now, when they're profiling the people that have caused the harm, they said one was by bandits, one was by Boko Haram. They had a couple from hoodlums and unknown gunmen. And then they now added NSAS. I'm sorry, how is an event a type of a perpetrator? If they happened during NSAS, were they unknown gunmen? Were they thugs? Were they hoodlums? So this narrative is a bit of a problem. And then lastly, Mr. President addressed the issue of third term, that he understands that people are saying that, so that there are no elections, so they will support INEC in every way for INEC to have elections. I'm sorry, you can give INEC money and support INEC as an institution, but if the staff of INEC don't feel safe and are not willing to do CVR or conduct an election, how are you going to have an election? So then we cannot shy away from that. So, I mean, I've seen people forwarding excerpts of the Constitution that allows the National Assembly to
Section 135, Section 135, subsection 3.
Thank you. That allows the National Assembly 6 months at a go to continue an administration if we're not able to have elections. It's a real possibility, and Nigerians better wake up to this. And it's not just President Buhari. I'm sorry, our governors are playing deaf, mute, and dumb because they're not speaking. In this whole Twitter ban, it's only Seyi Makinde that I've seen say anything. Even the governors that are active Twitter users are all playing deaf and dumb. Guys, wake up. This Nigeria, wake up.
Well, Professor Akintade.
Let me take just one aspect, because I subscribe to the submission of Yemi, and she cannot be more correct than as usual. This aspect, Buhari warning secessionists or anybody who want to destroy the country, I think it is we, the people of Nigeria, that actually should warn President Muhammadu Buhari. He should not be the one warning. We should warn, we should remind him to note that, look, when you talk about rude shock, when you talk about you will deal with people in the language they understand, he should simply remember that there are two major institutions or instruments that may not allow him to act the way he is dreaming. The first is the principle of international responsibility to protect. The second is the existence of the International Criminal Court. At the level of international responsibility to protect, there are 3 or 4 basic pillars on which the principle is based. And that is the factor of ethnic cleansing, the factor of a crime of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. If, for instance, Mr. President decides to act or traverse the provisions of these international conventions, certainly he must expect that the way Charles Taylor was arrested and tried, he may be guilty of that. So they must always remember that particular factor. The second point is simply that when Mr. President talks, his government, his administration does not appear to always consider the foreign policy implications. They make a pronouncement at the domestic level, but the next thing is that they don't always look at the implications. So as it is, I think that Mr. President should be more cautious and not give the impression that he is fighting the Igbo people in Nigeria.
Well, quickly, Professor Adeyemis, we have just about 2 minutes.
I just want to re-echo what Yemi said. There cannot be security in an environment of injustice. That's very clear. And two, if that rule of security is more important than rule of law is not vacated, as said by the Attorney General, it could only amount to a travesty of justice, everything happening in Nigeria. The moment you are not taking into consideration the rule of law and the right of Nigerians to live peacefully, and you are the one in custody of making that possible, then there is a problem. There is a reverse role. They are either protecting themselves against the person who's supposed to protect them, then there is problem. And generally, as we know, whether INEC or whether election or no election, the point remains that everybody is seeing it glaringly that there is no justice. Some people are allowed to do what they're supposed not to do, and they go free out of it. Especially when we know that we have a minister who has been seen as, abetting terrorism at a time, and is still in the ministry or in the government. I mean, people will be worried. There is a need to either ask him to resign so that we know that we are not a terrorist country, and somebody should not come out from one and say, look, you are harboring terrorists and you want us to stop terrorism. You know, these are issues. People should look into it, and we must do something about that. Well, justice.
Okay, thank you, Professor Adeyemis. On that note, we'll take another short commercial break. When we return, Thisday Live, the Sunday show, will continue. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, Professor Bola Akintade, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Professor Victor Adeyemis, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. And Yemi Adamolekun, enough is enough. Now, let's go to Mali. West African leaders have suspended Mali from the regional bloc over last week's coup. The leaders of the Economic Community of West African States gathered in Ghana for a special summit in response to the situation in Mali, which has seen Colonel Assimi Goïta named leader of the West African nation's government, days after he seized power by deposing the president and prime minister through forced resignations. At the end of the summit, the heads of state of the ECOWAS member nations demanded that Malian authorities should immediately release former transitional president Ba Ndor and Prime Minister Mokhtar Ouane, who are being kept under house arrest. They also called for the immediate nomination of a new civilian prime minister and the formation of a new inclusive government.
Excellencies, the sudden dissolution by the president of the transition of the government headed by Prime Minister Mokhtar Ouane on 14th May 2021, and the reappointment of the Prime Minister by the President of the transition with instructions to form a new broad-based government generated considerable tension between various groups, particularly the military, as the former ministers for defense and security were not reappointed in the new government which was announced.
Well, ECOWAS there suspending Mali. The African Union, a few days later, also suspended Mali from the African Union. France and the United States have also suspended their military cooperation with Mali. Well, let me start with you, Professor Adeyemis.
Well, like they say, it's a deja vu in Mali case. We once had somebody like Sanogo who took over power, and he was forced to recant. And this time around, it seems Assimi Goïta is getting away with it. suspending Mali is not completely what ECOWAS ought to do. They ought to really they would have done something to get Goita completely away. Like they did it in Sanogo's case and even in Mali, sometimes in Guinea's case. The reason is that Assimi Goita is, my own evaluation of the situation, by the presence of Azawad coming to meet him and appraising and being happy of his presence in Mali, shows that he's about conceding some Malian territory to Azawad to have their own country. Because when you look at it very well, Mali is a gateway into West Africa. And Mali shares border with Mauritania that has already decided to join the Algeria and the Maghreb world, which shows that they are not in consonance with what we do in Africa, ECOWAS. And we have Burkina Faso suffering now. Yesterday, about 100 people were killed in Burkina Faso. That's also an issue that has emanated from what happened in Mali. People won't see it. There is also Côte d'Ivoire, close to Mali. There is Guinea. There is Niger Republic that is with us, that is also close to Mali. These are very, very dangerous situations that ECOWAS should wake up and hedge against. Well, but we are not doing that. I mean, I'm very, very disturbed. They're supposed to do something now to get Assimi Goita out of the way. And I expect Senegal. I'm just worried that Senegal is not saying anything. Macky Sall is not saying anything up till now. It means Macky Sall somehow, I appreciate what Assimi Goita is doing. And it's very, very dangerous as far as I'm concerned. And ECOWAS should go beyond that. And we know that Mali is now trying to link Russia. And they had some agreement with Russia on security issues. I just don't know how they hate France to the extent that they feel that Russia will be the one to coordinate their security issues now. And we know whenever there is Russia and France, conflict, or call it face-off, it turns into conflagration. Okay. The prayer is that let ECOWAS not turn into conflagration. That's all I'm praying for.
Okay. First, Yemi, let me come to you, and then Prof will help us wrap it up, because his column today is precisely on this matter. It's titled AU Subsidiarity Rule and Unconstitutional Change of Government, the cases of Chad and Mali. That's page 58 of Thisday on Sunday. But very quickly, before I go to him.
Definitely, I think Prof will do an excellent job. But just to pick back on what Professor Adeyemis said when he was saying Macky Sall didn't say anything, just as it's hard to stand up for any sort of moral right when you yourself, you're standing on shaky ground. And we see that across the continent. You can't really comment on issues because of how you've come to power or how you are trying to remain in power. And that's been the African story. So until we get servant leaders who want to serve their people, then we will continue to see things like this play out.
Well, Prof, let me come back to you. The cases of Chad and Mali and the African Union. Are we dealing with double standards here?
Although the word triple standard, quadruple standard do not exist, I think it is more than double standard. The issue in Mali is not being addressed objectively. Now, while the African Union, the ECOWAS, are talking about unconstitutional change of government, the French are more interested in containing the expansion of terrorism, the insurgents, the Tuaregs there. Now, the United States, the NATO countries, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries, they also have their own strategic interests within the framework of Al-Qaeda. Now, international interests in Mali, they are all conflicting. And I am saying that the suspension of Mali, both at the level of the African Union and the ECOWAS, is at best meaningless. Why? As much as I agree with Professor Adeyemis that the factor of Assimi Goita should be addressed, he thinks that he should be removed. No, you can't remove an agent, a popular person, supported by the people. Now, as it is, people talk about coup within coup. And I've always agreed that it is only one coup because it's just continuity in change. Now, in this case, the people have demonstrated again supporting this same Assimi Goita that is unwanted. While you are talking about being a persona non grata, people are saying no, they want him. So the M5 movement, the June 5 movement, now are in support. They believe that what's happening? Why this second coup? This second coup is explained by the factor that Goita is saying the president, the vice president did not carry him along. He didn't know what they
when he constituted the cabinet.
Precisely. And now he's representing the military factor. The military are actively in support of Goita. So we now have a situation whereby the African Union, the ECOWAS, and all others are now coming together to fight a military-supported people. The French, just 2-3 days ago, suspended military cooperation with Goita. But at the end of the day, no solution can be gotten without seeking a reconciliation with French interests in Mali.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Akintade. And that's where we'll draw the curtain on today's edition of Thisday Live. You've been watching Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. For my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.